pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. We're going to start off with a couple of public hearings. Our first public hearing is going to be on a proposed ordinance 355, amending the on-lot sewage disposal ordinance to allow for non-building waivers. Please.
So proposed ordinance 355 provides criteria for when a waiver would be acceptable for on-lot sewage planning. The proposed amendment states that waivers would only be acceptable for subdivisions or land developments that will result in the creation of a lot or lots that will be used for non-sewage generating uses, such as a water storage tank, wireless communications facility, sewerage pump station, stormwater facility, or airport runway extension. These examples were taken directly from the DEP waiver form. The ordinance would also require the submission of the required DEP form and a note on the plan and property deeds notifying future property owners of the sewage planning waiver. We did receive one objection from a resident via email today prior to the meeting.
Okay. Is there anybody from the public here who would like to speak to this? All right. Board?
Hearing be closed. I second it.
Discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Our next public hearing concerns proposed ordinance 356, extending parking restrictions along Andrea Way.
Proposed ordinance 356 extends the parking restrictions to the entire length of the north side of Andrea Way and Kaywood North. Parking was previously allowed on a small section of the north side of the road. It's always been prohibited on the south side. The restriction was shown on the Kaywood North Estate lots plan.
Again, does anybody in attendance here have anything they want to speak to this? Board?
Move to close the public hearing.
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Public hearing is closed. All right, on to our regular agenda. First item for us is the approval of the minutes from our August 8th meeting. You have a copy of the minutes in your packet.
So moved, sir.
Second.
Any discussion?
Nope.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The minutes are approved. Now we have an opportunity for citizen comments. Is there anybody here that would like to make a comment on something that is not on the agenda? We'd ask you to hold yourself to 5 minutes if you wish to do so. Anybody want to speak to anything that's not on today's agenda? Okay. Moving right along. New agenda item. The state has told us that if we wish to add anything to the agenda, we need to approve it at the beginning of the meeting in order that people are aware that it might be coming up, so that someone doesn't leave the meeting and then we surprise them with something.
I would like to request an agenda that looks at no parking on the full length of Brush Valley Road, from Rock Hill Road to the intersection with College Township. It comes from a building project that's been going on probably for a year and is making some dangerous traffic situations, so we need to look at that.
Okay, let me see here.
Is it going to require a motion? Is that your intention to move on?
Yeah. If it needs to be a motion, I move that.
Well, if the only reason we have to vote on, if it is a motion, we have to.
Well, it'll be motion after we put it on the agenda to talk about it.
I mean, yeah, I think
Well, okay, it doesn't matter.
either
Okay,
way,
yeah.
because Denny could say, after you guys discuss it, Denny could make a motion that we put this up for public hearing and then the ordinance next month to add those areas for no parking.
So then it should be part of the, okay.
Then it should be
okay.
part of the agenda.
Would we need to send it to like planning or anybody like that?
No, it's just a no parking area.
Okay, I'll suggest that we do that before the manager's report at the end of our regularly scheduled items. Is that acceptable?
Sounds good to me.
Okay, anything else we want to add to the agenda? Hearing none, we'll move on to township business. Our first item of business is the Center Region COG Building Intermunicipal Agreement Modification.
So I'll introduce this, and then Mr. Nornberg is here to answer any questions
I
that
mean,
you
we're not
have.
gonna make him wait all through the meeting, is that here?
No, he has to go to the Borough Council after this.
Oh, well, please, you're welcome to do that.
We're being nice to him.
No,
Okay.
that's not being nice, then for a council meeting, and being nice.
During its August 18th, 2022 meeting, the Executive Committee discussed the COG Building Intermunicipal Agreement. A presentation was received by members at the July 25th General Forum meeting to share the proposed amendment to the COG Building Intermunicipal Agreement that would approve the transfer of ownership of the COG Building to the Center Region Council of Governments at the end of the lease on May 15th, 2028. The Executive Committee has agreed to bring this item back to the General Forum members at its September 29th meeting. During the July General Forum meeting, a presentation was made regarding the status of the COG building lease and a proposed amendment to the intermunicipal agreement regarding the building. The proposed amendment to the intermunicipal agreement, as recommended by the COG Facilities Committee and Executive Committee, would transfer the ownership of the building from the municipalities at the end of the lease period of 2028, when all lease payments have been made to the municipalities. Currently, the COG owns the land under the building, and the building is owned jointly by the municipalities. The recommended amendment would result in both the land and the building being owned by the COG after all lease payments are made. This will facilitate future planning for COG facility needs. Any decisions regarding future ownership of the building will still require unanimous approval by the General Forum. And I included all the pertinent information that the COG sent us on this, including the agreement and the deed and the proposed modifications to the agreement. And I believe since they're going to be discussing this again at your September General Forum meeting, that's why we wanted to have the conversation here to answer any questions that you might have. And that's why Mr. Nornberg is here.
Do you have anything you want to open with, or should we dig right in?
No, I think Amy did a great job.
Denny, you asked that we include this in our agenda, so would you want to kick this off, of course? Your thoughts, questions?
I did.
Yes.
I was thinking Bud introduced this.
Well,
This
I'm
one.
going to Bud next. I just
Oh,
sent you,
okay.
since you asked, you specifically said you wanted to see it on the agenda, so I'm going to give you
Well, I guess it's,
first shot.
it's an issue coming down the road in 3 years, and it seems as though things have gone well for the 22 years that we've been operating as COG with the building, and it just seemed as though it was something that we should put out to the public and see what kind of reaction we get.
Okay.
It's a pretty pro forma kind of real estate change.
Bud, your thoughts?
Well, yeah, I think I have my best to be on there too, because we've been through this, and I wasn't sure what it was, and maybe you can start answering some questions here. Where is this proposal at that you want to, do you have it with you? We get an answer from that?
That's what was in the agenda item.
All this really doesn't tell us that much.
So there were three items provided to you.
Yes.
One is the intermunicipal agreement from 2001, the original agreement regarding the joint development and ownership of the COG building. And in that agreement, in one section of it, there's a provision for modification. And as you all, I think you all have been around for some of these earlier discussions, including the one in July. And so you're aware that the agreement is silent on what happens at the end of the payment of all of the leases. At the end of the lease period, it's not clear what would happen with the ownership of the building, other than the payments are all complete and there would be no more rent payments. But the question of who owns the building, does it revert then at that point to the COG, was silent. So in the municipal agreement, there is a section for modification, and after.
Which one are you talking about? We have three.
Correct.
Which
So-
one are you talking about?
Well, I'm referring to the original modification, or original agreement at this point.
Oh,
but
this is modification, this is one you're talking about. the
We can talk about,
modification.
yeah.
Okay.
So
Okay.
after discussion a year ago, after actually 2 years ago, there's been quite a bit of discussion, and that led to the General Forum agreeing in September 2021 to request that this agreement be drafted by the COG solicitor.
Okay.
And that was at the request of the Facilities Committee and Executive Committee to have the documents prepared. And so the agreement would be voted upon by the General Forum, and then each municipality would need to also complete the agreement, whether it's voted on by motion or ordinance or resolution, depending on what the particular requirement of the municipality would be, so that we would execute the transaction.
The reason I was confused, I didn't see a signing sheet on this at all. This must not be the final document you would present.
No, it's in there, bud.
It is in here?
Yeah.
Well, okay, let me go back very first. This is where I'm very confused. We clearly have a deed for that land, and that building is clearly on that land. So that clearly, to me, that the Center Region already owns that building. Now, unless it has wheels or it floats, that is part of the land. So I don't know why we have to amend this deed to say that building belongs to this, because it already belongs on the land, and it's part of the land. So clearly, that is already owned by the COG, which I don't think is an issue there. We designed it that way, and that's why I'm concerned why we have to vote to give that to the COG, because the deed says it already belongs to the COG.
Okay, so the deed that's been provided to you in your packet is a draft deed to be executed at the end of 2028, when the rent payments are all complete. The Facilities Committee asked that the COG solicitor prepare a deed so that everyone would have a chance to see that. Currently, the land is owned by the COG, but the building is jointly owned by the municipalities.
Okay, that's where the confusion comes in. It is not. If that building's on that land, it belongs to the Center Region COG. Where the other piece of paper is simply how it was paid for. And this explains how it was paid for and how we would get out of it or get in it. I don't have a problem if you want to draw it up to state that it is, but I'm not sure why we think that building doesn't belong to the Center Region Council of Governments. I'm not sure why. And I presented this to 2 different real estate attorneys, and they agree with, they pretty much verified what I was thinking, that the COG really already owns that building. But if you want to have a deed to clarify all that, then I don't have a problem with that. The other part was how the agreement of how we would pay for, how we paid for it, and how if we decided to get out of it, who would get out of it, how much the money would be split. That had nothing to do with the lease. Now, the third one is the lease, and that is how the money is charged to each franchise. And there's my question is, they want to take the rent money that we receive and give it to administration. Instead of get straight to administration instead of to each municipality, and I don't think that's a smart move. I think that money should come to municipality. We can use it against our bill from the COG, or use whatever way we want. And I think mixing it in with administration and saying, well, it offsets administration funds is kind of murky, because what is administration budget before they had the rent come in? So we need a clearer view of how much we spend administration and keep the rent out of it. So that's the part that I think we should take a very hard look at and see what we can do there. And the other thing is, this isn't due for till 29, is it 29? 28, 29, and why are we speaking for the board in 2029? It may be a completely different board. I don't know why we're speaking for them. They may have different attitudes at the time. So those are 2 things that concern me.
So if I could address the question of the rent. Right now, the rent payments are from 3 different sources within the COG building. One is Center Region Code, one is administration and Center Region Planning, and then there's a small piece from the refuse and recycling program. So code and refuse and recycling are what you would call an enterprise, because they bring in money, and so they're contributing out of the resources that come in from their program. The other 2, administration and Center Region Planning, are supported by the municipalities that are participating in that. So we have done projections. The facilities coordinator and our finance director did projections looking at the cost to operate the building and the amount of revenue coming in from the code and refuse and recycling program, and those would be about even. So it's not saying that their rent would come to administration. It's that that rent is projected to be about what it costs to operate the building. So at the end of the lease period, instead of rent coming from the municipalities to go to Center Region Planning and Center Region COG administration, we would be billing the municipalities less because we wouldn't need that rent anymore. And on average, it's projected, and again, this is several years in the future, so we'd have to look at it more closely when we get there. But on average, it's projected that the rent paid by Center Region Code and Refuse and Recycling would cover the cost of operating the building without having to charge municipalities more. So instead of taking money from one pocket and putting it in the other for the municipalities, it would be a wash, and that would simplify the cash flow for everybody on that. But you're right, it is in the future, so it's a little bit left to be determined. But the reason we're talking about this now is that the Facilities Committee started looking at this 3 or 4 years ago and felt it was important to settle this question, make sure that the building and property are all going to be titled and owned by the COG at that point in 2028. And so this is a recommendation that's been worked by the Facilities Committee, and it's gone through Finance and Exec committees as well as the General Forum at least twice now. We've reviewed it with the meetings with the municipal managers to get their input on the recommendations here. So we're trying to, I guess, button this up while everybody's very familiar with the issue. If we brush this aside and set it off again for another 3 or 4 years, we would have to probably start a 3-year cycle of meetings and education and reminding everybody about how we got here and where we are and why this is important. And the other thing is it's important for planning for the future. One of the things that I think has been important for all of the municipalities as we've talked to them during the program plan is to start looking at and planning for the future needs of our COG facilities, in particular the operations that are currently leasing space. And the intent would be to make sure we're planning for the future and planning to own and operate facilities that may be jointly owned by the COG and be more efficiently owned and operated by the COG rather than potentially continuing those leases. So making sure we know who owns and operates the building gives us a little bit more flexibility. And so we expect the COG Facilities Committee and COG Facilities Project Manager to begin working on a long-term facilities plan in 2023 and working that through the committee process and reviewing that with the General Forum when that's complete. And this will be help facilitate that process.
Well, I think actually, go ahead, Dan.
Is Park and Rec an income stream? Like code?
Not as an enterprise. I mean, they do bring in money, but there's more municipal support than there is revenue. So it's
Okay.
some of the revenue comes in to offset the cost of that operation, but not enough.
Okay. Thank you.
I don't disagree with COG owning the bill. I think that needs to be wrapped up. I think we can do that. Where I'm concerned is, and I know there's a couple oxymorons in there when they said, well, the Center Region can handle it better or whatever. I don't know that for sure. But here's the issue. Very simple. We own a percentage of that building, almost 9% of that building. And we're entitled to income from that because we are renting that building to the code and to all of the 26 things that we deserve income from that. Now, what you're saying, you want us to give that income into administration so they can decide. That's exactly, but it will be the same thing. I agree. In the very end, we'll have to just vote on it. But I say that money should come to municipalities, and we can either use it how we want to use it to offset our bill from the COG or use it just General Forum, and it keeps it much cleaner. And then when 2029 runs around, we sit down and we say, okay, we want to raise the rent to whatever it is, whatever market value is now, and that's what we want out of that. And I think that's a more cleaner way to do it. I don't like muddying the waters by putting that money in administration, and that would lower administration bill. I don't see that working real well. I don't. So I think we need to keep them separated, keep them very fluid, and everybody can see what's going on. So that's why I object to the rent, how the rent is handled. The rest of it makes sense. I think it's already in there. I think it's already part of the program. They own the building. And yes, I agree, we are responsible for upkeep of that building, but we would be anyway. So it doesn't make any difference who the rent goes to. But I still think that we keep it clean, keep it coming to us. That is, or to the municipalities. It's, right now it's 20,000, I don't even know what it is.
It's not that much.
It's 17,000, but it could go up at the end of the lease term. Right now, it's very inexpensive. I don't know how much a square foot it is. Certainly 10 years from now, rental space is going to go up 20, 30%. And so I think that's the reason I want to keep the rent coming directly to us and let us handle our money, and then we can negotiate the COG budget and also help pay that building, pay for the building too. So that is my speech, and that's why I would vote against this. Not against the transferring deed or making the deed very clear or whatever else. Is the rent disbursement.
Frank, you want to weigh in on this?
Sure.
Because I was on the facilities committee when this all went down, and I kind of took a position that we have 5.5 years. This doesn't have to be done at the speed of light, and that's kind of where I came from with it. Now, that being said, who is the COG? The COG is the 6 municipalities. So who owns the COG? The 6 municipalities. You know, if you look at it, we are the board of directors. When we sit down and we have to do financial things, whether we own the building or the COG owns the building or who, we're the ones that have to have a unanimous vote to do anything with that asset, because it is an asset of COG. And the board usually takes care of assets. So as far as that's concerned, I you know, what the way we handle the rent and stuff, I don't think is a major issue. It can go either way. Either we give money to the COG and they give some back, but it, you know, again, that's just a wash when you look at it in the books. So I don't care which way we go there. But as far as the building transfer, I think we're going to have to do something in 2028 to clear it up, but I don't think we have to do it like right now. I mean, I think we've done the work on it. We know what we should do, but I think Denny or somebody said earlier that, you know, in 2028, that's 5.5 years. I think Denny and I are the longest ones here. We go 5 years till we're up for election, but these 3 guys are going to be up in the next 3 or 4 years. So we could have a whole new board sitting here that could change whatever they want to do. What's that? I said could have, but I didn't say would, but we could have a whole new board. So like I said, I agree with whoever said that earlier, but I have no problem working through this and ironing things out, but I really don't think we need to go at the speed of light.
It's interesting, when you look at the signature page, and none of those people are on any boards right now.
Yeah.
Except the 203 document.
Nigel, questions, thoughts?
Bud and Frank pretty much covered everything I've been thinking of. Nothing to add.
Well, I will say that some of this sounds like taking money out of my left pocket and putting it into my right pocket. I guess there will be, and anything like this is kind of, there are winners and losers. If we do transfer it to the COG, the municipalities will be compensated for that transfer. Does that compensation come at our current split?
That's a good question.
I don't.
The compensation is ongoing through May of 2028. At the end of the lease term,
That's the rent.
correct, there's no provision for any continuing rent. So at that point, if nothing happens between now and May of 2028, the rent would stop and things would sit, and we would then work with all of the elected officials to start this conversation all over again. And with all due respect, we have not been moving at the speed of light. This has been going on for 3 or 4 years. So I don't think things have been rushed here, and it's been talked about several times by committees and the general forum. But I do respect all of the questions that we're entertaining here, and that's why we're taking the time to talk through this.
I guess what I'm thinking of, and maybe this doesn't apply, but, you know, Harris Township has grown proportional to the region as a whole. And so our investment initially is smaller than our equity share now.
And I believe that's driven by the initial investment, not based on what the size, you know, other things, other COG formulas are driven by your population and income.
All right, thanks for that. So I guess the one aspect then that remains in my mind is if we were to dispose of this building and property, would we as municipalities be giving up some control and say?
Well, it's all in
and-
here,
and-
yes, we would. We would,
Okay,
yes.
so to me, that's maybe the sticking issue that I need to wrap my head around is we as municipalities are giving up our control over the disposal of our real assets. Is that a
Let's
fair?
talk about it in the member withdrawal category.
That's withdrawal, but it's not talking about, he's talking about what happens when, let's say, 2030.
Oh, okay.
They sell the building, what happens then?
Okay.
Well, as I think you said earlier, we are COG and the COG is us, so it's still something that's driven not so much by the lease document, but by the articles of agreement that spell out that any purchase or sale of a real asset like the land or the building would require the unanimous vote of the COG and all the member communities. So,
Well,
that would
the
still.
membership would get first choice. If that building were to be sold, or we wanted to sell our share, the other municipalities would get first choice. If they turned it down, then it would be, the government entities would give a choice, and after that, it could go to anybody. So, yes, it explains it pretty clearly, but that would mean dropping out of the.
Let's talk about in the transfer section, but yeah, you're right.
But that's, yeah, my complaint is not with any of this, any of that, how we turn it over, how we lose it. My complaint is that we would lose control of the property that we would own. And I think it should be us to decide, we want to put that money back into, to reduce our obligation to COG or to the library or whatever we want to do, or spend it on parking or whatever. Yeah.
Does anybody else have anything for the executive director? Questions? Thank you.
You bet, thank you.
Now the reference, because of that.
Okay. Next item on our agenda is Alex's Proscape Phase 1 Final Land Development Plan.
Todd is on the Zoom, so we'll have him unmute and show himself.
On July 25th of this year, staff received from Pentair Engineering a final land development plan for the property at 550 Torrey Lane, which is currently being used as the professional offices of Alex's Proscape, a landscaping company. The property is zoned general industrial. The purpose of the plan is to allow for the Phase 1 construction of a 7,200 square foot garage and storage building for the business on the eastern portion of the property. Stormwater management, parking, landscaping, lighting, and other improvements are proposed with this phase. One review of the plan has been completed, copies of which were included with the agenda, as well as a plan sheet showing what is proposed. If you'll notice on the board behind you, there are two plan sheets. The one on the left shows the general layout of what's proposed, as well as what's existing. On the one on the right is specifically the lighting plan. I know some residents have expressed some concern about lighting, and as you can see from that lighting plan, the anticipated lighting pattern shows that the lighting is contained to the property. The number of comments is relatively few and should be able to be addressed in a timely fashion. Staff's recommendation is to move to approve the Alex's Proscape Phase 1 Final Land Development Plan, contingent upon satisfactory completion of all outstanding comments from the August 9, 2022 letter of the Township Engineer, the August 17, 2022 memo of the Principal Planner, and the August 18, 2022 letter of the Zoning Officer.
Okay. Mark, any comments?
I have no comments.
Wrong Mark. No, Mark Toretti went to get up.
Oh, wrong Mark.
He was ready to
That
answer.
reminds that commercial with Alex Rodriguez. Oh, no, the other Alex Rodriguez.
I have a question, Bruce.
Sure.
The inlet on the stormwater, is one inlet sufficient for that infiltration basin to run down to Wall Avenue?
Please,
Did
yeah.
Jerry look at that with respect to the volume of stormwater?
Yeah, I think you actually, we talked about this at the preliminary plan. Yeah, there's basically one inlet structure that overflows, and also the wall height is higher, I think, by a foot or so from that inlet.
On the infiltration basin?
Yes,
Okay.
on there, so there's plenty of capacity with that. So, the odds of it overflowing are very, very, very unlikely on there because we've built in extra capacity.
But those are
In
the
that
kind of
basin.
things that happen nowadays,
Yeah,
so.
yeah,
I was sort of concerned of making sure we didn't have stormwater flowing over
yeah,
that basin,
yeah.
because you have some neighbors down here that,
Yeah, I know, and that's why it says even the walls are up, the outlet structure on the top of it where the water will flow into if it overflows, is, I think, 1.5 or 2 feet below the tops of the walls. So you have that capacity. Typically, they're a lot lower in a basin, but with this, we kept the walls a little bit higher.
if you say so.
Okay.
Okay.
Anybody else?
We've had some very strange
Yeah, I
rains
know,
in the last
I know.
couple of years, and we don't
Yeah.
want something happening with that one, so.
But
Yeah, I'll start off by making a motion to approve. And, is there a second? Okay. Now, one comment I'd like to have, and I'm glad this came up. This is a good example of what we've been talking about, landscaping. And why we're going to review our landscape requirements and designs. And as I look at this, this is, well, I won't get too deeply into it, but as I look at this, you have to put 139 arborvitae in 5 foot high.
Yeah.
And they have to be mulched 4 feet around each side, but there's plants inside those plants that have to be mulched 4 feet, and there's plants on top of other plants. Well, this year it's okay, next year it's okay.
but
In about 3 or 5 years from now, they'll all be dead.
They'd be growing
They'll be
together,
dead.
yeah.
And that's what we're looking at. So I don't know how far along you are on this plan of plan. It says you're in the process of planning some, I guess, or coming up with other plans, but be aware of what's going on with our planning commission. That there'll be some, like a buffer, you need a buffer between our property and your property, and our property is all weeds. You don't want the headlights shining into our property. It's all weeds. So that's one of the things you're looking at, where buffers are needed, where they aren't needed. And certainly, our expert over here knows trees grow, right?
well, we have experts sitting here as well. I'll point out.
Okay. So be aware that there's going to be over, I don't know how long it's going to take us.
It's gonna take us a while.
Yeah, it can take us a while, but there will be a difference in requirements on here. So I don't know how you want to handle that. Just be aware of that, so.
Maybe we could ask Alice Groscaping to meet with our planning commission.
I think wouldn't be a bad idea.
Actually, it's starting with the Shade Tree Commission because the one member of our Shade Tree Commission is a landscape contractor.
Okay.
So-
Well, certainly, you can have all the input on it. If you can find out when the planning commission meets and, or what's on their agenda to give us some input, because it borders on ridiculous.
Yeah, well, we talked about concern about ultimately getting them too close where they're gonna die. That's something where,
We found out
Yeah.
in our own situation, our municipal, we have a forest.
Yeah.
Why we have a forest, I don't know.
Yeah.
We have trees all clumped around there,
Yeah.
and across the street where the energy place is and the vertical thing is,
Yeah.
those trees, that's overloaded. It's
Yeah.
crazy
Yeah,
area.
well, I think it's a matter of transitioning from bare ground, having something.
yeah,
And as time goes on, perhaps we need to be thinking about things may need to be removed in 10 years, 5 years.
Yeah.
And thin it out.
Yeah.
Yes, Todd, please.
Yeah, I think it's important to point out that there are 2 different buffer regulations in play with this plan. The buffer regulations that people normally complain about are corridor overlay buffer regulations, and they are pretty, in some cases, in commercial and industrial applications, they are pretty thorough as far as meeting them. The only place I think on this plan that the corridor overlay regulations are apply are on the side of the property, the north side of the property where Miller Electric and Colonial Press are. The other buffer regulations along the neighborhood roads are not the corridor overlay regulations. These are buffer regulations that have existed much longer than the corridor overlay districts existed, I think. These are buffer plantings that are required as buffers between non-residential zones and residential zones. It's important to point out that those regulations don't require any specific number of trees or bushes or anything. Basically, what those regulations say is you have to have a landscape buffer that screens from view the residential properties from the non-residential properties. So I just wanted to make clear that, you know, the culprit of the normal complaint, the corridor overlay regulations, are not particularly onerous on this plan. It's the other regulations that have existed much longer, and they can be done a different way. As a matter of fact, as you can tell from my review letter, if you read it, there have been conversations ongoing with Alex Popovich and Mark Toretti and myself about trying to rework those so that they can plant less but still get the visual screening that's required. We're highly in favor of that. We don't want people to spend any more money than they have to. So I imagine we'll be seeing another landscaping plan that accomplishes the same purpose with fewer plants.
Yeah, and the other thing is, you know, which we understand that the buffer between like the industrial and the residential, you don't get credit for any like a fence that's there that probably does, you know, does help with, I'm sure with the neighbors would appreciate, you know, having a fence there too as an option. So that was one of the things that we didn't, you know, we don't get credit for on his site on there. So something just, you know, for future, you know, adjustments to the
Well,
ordinance.
for historical purposes,
Yeah.
this originally, one of the first things we got was a storage facility.
Yeah.
And that would have been a lot of traffic around there, and they
Yeah.
were concerned about headlights going over into the residential area. That was a definite concern.
So I might suggest that if you, or if you guys have any, because you guys are landscape contractors as well, if you have any suggestions on the landscape buffering, if you
Yeah.
want to send me an email, we're
Okay,
gonna
yeah.
start, the Shade Tree Commission's gonna start next month, talking about this in earnest, and then we'll move those discussions up with the Planning Commission. But we're very interested in what we can do, and Todd and Mark and I have discussed some ideas that they
Okay.
have. So if you have anything that you've seen that you think, hey, this doesn't make a whole lot of sense, I think when we had to do it for our own building, and then we walked that buffer, or Shade Tree Commission walked the whole 4 acres, and we realized the trees are just in clumps, and then we've lost a bunch of trees, and it's not real well thought
Yeah.
out, so,
Okay.
yep.
Yeah.
You know, they make beautiful artificial Christmas trees. They probably make beautiful artificial arborvitae.
All right, well, bringing this back to the current plan, under the current regulations, we have a motion and a second.
I just have one
Please, yep.
quick comment, and it's more of a comment. And I know that you mentioned about lighting and stuff, but, you know, one of the I guess, unique properties of this property is that you are right in the middle of a residential area. So whatever you do, please make your lights adjustable, just in case we have to kind of tweak them a little bit once they're in. Because I think that's going to be important, that we don't shine in somebody's back door or something, so.
A dimmer switch would also help.
The dimmer, so.
Real low.
Anything further? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Next up is proposed ordinance 355, amending the on-lot sewage disposal ordinance to allow for non-building waivers.
Now, explain that to us.
All right, so, every subdivision or land development that is proposed in the township needs to have sewage planning conducted for it, which for anything outside of the growth boundary and sewer service area is identifying on-lot septic system locations. So what this ordinance would allow for, or at least clarify, is if someone comes in and requests a waiver to doing that sewage planning, this ordinance provides situations where such a waiver is acceptable to the township and the process they need to go through, which includes filling out a DEP form and also putting a notice on the deed. So this would only be waiving the requirement for sewage planning, so any type of use that doesn't involve the generation of septic wastewater. There's no kitchen or bath or shower facilities. I think the examples in here are like airport runway extensions, water tanks, cell towers, things that don't have a bathroom or any type of kitchen or sewage generating use on them, could apply for a waiver in that case. That's what this ordinance is meant to clarify.
And to be clear, if the use of that property changes in the future, we'll still have those requirements.
Absolutely, yeah, anytime someone comes in to do a sewage generating use, they're gonna have to go through that planning process and identify a primary and a backup. And that's gonna be noted on both the land development plan or the subdivision plan as well as on the deed. So that way the property owner is fully aware of it. And when they come in to get a sewage permit, the SEO will hopefully be able to point out, hey, you need to go through the sewage planning process at this
And
point.
they cannot request an extension of that waiver at that point. When they're building something on it,
No,
the
once they
waiver
propose a
basically
sewage generating use, they have to do the sewage planning. at
the
that
waiver disappears when there's a building put on.
Yeah, well, but it's before it's proposed. even.
Right, okay,
I have a question.
okay.
How is gray water, I mean, okay, there is sewage water, there's gray water. How is gray water handled on that? Does it address that at all? For instance, if you have something you need water to do something with, whatever, clean tools, whatever, how would that be addressed?
I think gray water is still considered sewer per DEP.
So if you have
regulations.
water to that property, then you'd almost be required to have sewer.
Yeah, I think if you have water to that property, even if you're using a cistern that's collecting rainwater, if you have any type of discharge taking place of any type, you'd have to get.
Rainwater.
Yeah, there was a situation here in the township not too long ago where someone was proposing a cabin and they were proposing to use a rainwater cistern just to collect water. They weren't gonna have a well, and DEP still required them to do sewage planning because they were going to still have a sink, and I believe they may have been having a toilet or a shower as well. but
Well, no, I
nonetheless-
understand that, oh, yeah.
Right, but
oh,
if you're
yeah.
using any type of water and you're gonna have a discharge, a gray water, it would still be sewer from my understanding, unless a different way can be clarified.
Well, gray water is classified, there is gray water that's not classified sewage, I don't know what that means necessarily. You wash your face, wash your hands with it, that's gray water, is that sewage?
I believe DEP considers it sewage. I mean, they
I wouldn't
consider
doubt that.
the water that UAJA treats to high quality standards sewage as well. So as far as I'm aware, gray water can still be considered
Okay,
sewage. by
and
DEP.
I don't know, where would this come into effect if someone had a, what do you call it? A toilet that's used as a compost toilet.
A composting toilet, there's a process for them to go through to get approval for a composting.
I know two hunting camps that have those.
Well, yeah, but again, that would be sewage planning at that point. That is considered sewage planning. When you're coming in to do a composting toilet,
Yeah, compost.
that is a form of sewage planning that's being
Oh,
done at
okay,
that point.
all right, okay.
Yes, I just want to clarify that. If I got this straight, I'm pretty sure I understand what this is going on. But recently, we did the Bickle subdivision, and they applied for it. Now, my question is that what we're talking about, where they're not changing anything, they're just subdividing land? Would that qualify for this? Or do they have to go back and do it because they may already have that on there?
think
Is that
we
what we're
exempted
talking
that.
about?
They already had their waiver approved. This is for any future waivers that take.
No, I'm going back, let's say they come in today with this.
Sure.
and
They'd
is
have to
that-
follow
Is
this.
that what this
Yeah.
is kind of for, so we don't have to go through and make somebody do something that's unnecessary?
Right, this is to provide guidance both to the township as well as to the applicant. They would have known that, hey, if we're coming in and we're gonna be proposing no sewage generating uses, we have to fill out the form, we have to put the note on the deed, we, go through that whole process. So this is to inform the applicant as well as to just give the township some structure for when people do come in that you can review these.
That answers my question. That makes sense.
Nigel? Anything?
Nope.
I guess I find it, so in the ordinance here, we give examples of non-sewage generating uses. It's fine to me, so a water storage tank doesn't,
Water storage tank is just holding potable water. This is gonna be gravity feeding it down to customers.
Okay.
It's not gonna have a wastewater.
If it breaks, we got more problems than sewage.
and I guess if we have a sewage pump station, we can probably deal with sewage.
Yes, hopefully, yes.
All right. Anything else, anybody? Okay, I could use a motion to approve ordinance
I
number
did.
3.
I already did.
Oh, we did?
I
We have a
thought we
motion
did.
and a
No,
second?
he didn't.
I didn't?
No.
Oh, I meant to, I'm sorry.
Thought you did.
In retrospect, I moved that we what's the words?
55.
355.
Okay.
Proposed ordinance 355.
Okay, move to approve proposed ordinance 355, amending the on-lot sewage disposal ordinance to allow for non-building waivers.
Second, okay, Danny got it.
Okay, motion is second. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. It passes. Thank you. All right. Next up on our agenda is shared parking regulations.
Okay, I'll start this off, and then Todd and Mark are also both here to answer some questions. And we do have members of the Village Parking Committee here. It's lovely to see them again. The Planning Commission met with members of the Village Parking Committee to review the Village Parking Report in August. At that meeting, the group discussed extending the allowable length for shared parking required on village zone lots from 66 feet to 1,000 feet on properties located in either the village or the village commercial zoning district. While drafting the necessary ordinance language, staff noted a potential problem that the board should discuss further. The township does not have a fully developed pedestrian network, which means we could be allowing properties to locate required parking on other properties that are not accessible by a sidewalk or a shared use path and which have no street lighting. This could create an unsafe condition for pedestrians using the shared parking lot and could open up potential liability for the township. This is particularly an issue on the east side of the village where properties could potentially share parking with properties along Bowl Avenue. It should be noted that the Village Parking Committee had discussions about this when they were considering off-site shared parking lots and how municipal parking lots could be used. So we would like tonight to discuss the options to resolve this concern. One option would be to require properties wishing to share parking where pedestrian access is lacking to install sidewalks, but this may not be a very popular approach with a business, especially because it would be cost prohibitive. The board could also suggest that the Planning Commission discuss the issue again and determine if there is a different distance for shared parking that would still provide a benefit to property owners without posing issues for pedestrian access. And we did put together some draft language, which is in your agenda packet. We took what we have now, our existing regulations, and we looked at College Township shared parking regulations. And that's where we noticed College Township's regulations say that you have to provide a means of pedestrian access. And that's where we noticed the issue with the 1,000 feet. So we're, kind of were kicking this around in the office, and one of the discussion points we had was maybe if we went back with some mapping, we would find that 750 feet still provides that benefit, but doesn't cause the issue with properties on the east side potentially sharing with properties along Bowl Avenue that don't have pedestrian access. So we're looking for some guidance. You want to make a comment?
Yes, please.
I understand the issue with on East Main Street. My problem is more on West Main Street. If you have to, there's a lot more sidewalk out there. There's a lot further distance out there, and they still have the same ability to do with their properties as does East. Now, I get the whole factor that, East maybe should be 750 feet. Is it possible to do East 750 because of the sidewalks, and then West another square or another footage because of the sidewalks that direction?
I mean, I would think the Board of Supervisors could do whatever they felt was necessary. I don't know that we love having a split regulation like that, but it doesn't mean we couldn't do it.
I just thought it might be easier to
Yeah.
accommodate.
Todd, do you have any thoughts? He can unmute
He's working
himself.
on it.
I couldn't get my cursor to get over there. I didn't hear all of what Tracy said.
So Tracy suggested that we have one regulation for the west side of the village, west side of Main Street, which would be 1,000 feet, and one regulation for the east side of the village, because the west side has more sidewalks, and the east side would be like 750 or something.
Well, I think, and Mark can probably talk about this too, I think one of the problems with having different regulations on either side of a street, in this case, with the division line being the diamond, would be you would have to prove that there's some tangible reason or reasons to do so in order to keep the regulation from being considered arbitrary. If there are actual physical reasons that are quantifiable to do different regulations on the same street in the same zoning district, that's something the Board of Supervisors can probably consider if there really isn't any tangible, quantifiable reason to do so. then I think that puts the township in an awkward position. Of course, all of this should be reviewed by the township solicitor if it's actually proposed.
Yeah, no,
Let Mark.
I'll just mention, I think that, like, splitting it would, I think, as Todd said, it could be a little complicated in coming up with the reasoning behind it, because in the end, if we require pedestrian access and keep it at 1,000 feet, it's just going to mean that certain areas east of the township just won't be accessible unless they install sidewalks. It's gonna be kind of self-limiting in that way. So if you stick with 1,000 feet, it's not gonna hurt anyone on the east side to do that. It's just, if you require pedestrian access, it's not gonna really make things along Bull Avenue that might be within 1,000 feet viable without putting in sidewalks. It's just something you'd have to keep in mind.
Could you sort of project for me the diamond? How far does 1,000 feet get us on Main Street going east or west?
I'm not logged
I mean,
on Zoom.
Does it come to the township building? Is
So
it
1,000 feet from the diamond is actually,
coming this way?
coming this way would be pretty much to the Loop Road intersection.
To Loop Road?
Yeah, to Loop Road. It'd be 1,000 feet.
And we have sidewalk and all that?
No.
You have
We
kind
don't.
of
We-
hitting
yeah, there's
this sidewalk. I mean, if you're on the north side, I'd say
Nobody
it's
walking the
pretty
sidewalk
consistent.
anyhow.
Coming on the south side, it's a little more. hit
Very
and miss.
irregular.
Yes.
knew
But
What
north
about,
side's-
what about going the other way 1,000 feet?
Like
Does it take us down to
Well,
Tennis Alley?
It takes you outside of the village district entirely.
Past
so-
Wagner?
Yeah, so you would be outside where you could even share parking. It's well beyond Tennis Alley. I think Tennis Alley, I gotta count my rings on this map I had here. Tennis Alley is only 600 feet from the middle of the diamond.
And we have sidewalk all the way to Wagner on that side, don't we?
Yes.
Not
But-
all the way to Wagner. It
Well, all the way to Tennis, I'm
to
sorry. all the way to
tennis. Yeah, past tennis, we have a little bit of hit and miss sidewalk, and
Okay.
kind
I'd
of.
say the village on that side is well served by sidewalks. On this side, it's not bad either. It's just mostly on the north side.
Well, I would like to make a comment on, if we put in the thing about that if you're gonna use shared use, you have to provide pedestrian way. I think I like that for the simple reason, that gives the property owner the choice. If he wants to allow shared parking on his property, he would have to install sidewalks. If he doesn't wanna do it, he just says, I don't have sidewalks, I can't do it. So I think that
don't
puts,
think it works
puts it
like
back in the property owner's hands. But at the end of the day, I
Where is
just
it
think,
not sidewalk?
I think we,
Right out here.
Going east out here.
To
yeah,
the,
I don't
to
think
the
it's a,
traffic light.
I'm not upset with the
Require
1,000.
sidewalk.
I'd personally just put them wherever you can share. Whoever can share with you can share.
Tracy, can you go to the microphone, please? Thank you.
I think the issue that we spoke about originally was not just going east and west, but also the flexibility of somebody over by Tennis Alley coming and maybe sharing at one of the churches. The flexibility of being able to do that. Maybe, I mean, even anywhere else, because that adds to the flexibility of that turn. So I agree that if you say sidewalks are needed or whatever, I think that's perfect.
I think looking at the mapping, the village going north that way towards the churches and the fire hall, it's not too bad. It's really trying to go east here past the steakhouse parking lot over the bridge. I know I've comfortably walked down there, but I think when you have to consider people of all ages with children or anything else,
Facilities.
the liability that might come from that could be
Okay,
bad.
who would need to put sidewalk in for that? Who would need that down there?
Well, if someone here in the east side of the village wanted to share with, let's say they wanted to share with Eric down here at the bank property, to be able to share that parking and claim it for themselves, you know, the township would be agreeing to saying, yes, people can get from there to here safely, and if something bad were to happen, I think that was the concern.
Yeah, I think that's a liability.
Well, what's the
Well, bridge,
liability?
there's no sidewalk really past.
And there's,
right
yeah, and
across
there's,
the street here.
and there really isn't any street lighting down there either.
Well, where would we put the sidewalk down there? Doesn't make sense. Okay, so I'm trying to find a scenario that someone would want to use as a parking, the car lot down as a parking, and Eric allowing them, number two, and then who would that be? What scenario would someone want to do that?
Someone.
Well, okay, 1,000, where would you put this? You're not 1,000 feet away from it. I guess I'm a
think
little bit.
as far as who would want to, if someone needs parking to be able to develop a use on their property, and they can't get it from someone closer to them, and that's viable, or it's an option.
We know
we're
this,
willing to do
here's,
it.
they are all right here, okay. let's give me, what started this whole mess was this building across the street wanted to put a coffee shop in. She didn't have enough parking. She had two, but she didn't have three, and she couldn't negotiate with the neighbors to get, we weren't allowed to share with, she could share, I guess now she can share with this, right? Mm-hmm. So why would she even want to put a parking lot, why would she even need to put park a car down there at Eric's?
But I mean, she could,
Why?
right? So the ordinance is giving her the ability. It's not saying she has to share with somebody down at Eric's. It's giving her the ability, and it's giving other people the ability to share. And the concern is, you know, if there isn't a pedestrian access way, how is that person going to navigate to get to that business? But again, I think what Frank said, it is kind of self-limiting. Like if you find out, if we leave the language in that says you have to have a means of access provided, and you don't want to provide the access, you don't want to put in a shared use path or whatever, then you're not going to share the parking.
Well, it means Kelly's would have to put a
Not Kelly's. If I were Sean Kelly, I would say if you want to share the parking,
no, we'd have to put a sidewalk across his property.
the onus is on you, and then you have to negotiate
I
an
don't think
easement.
you'd require it across a driveway or an entryway.
So there's no, so we couldn't put sidewalks down if we wanted to.
But the point is, even if they walk across that, there's a bridge that doesn't have a safe pedestrian route across it.
So that would mean putting a pedestrian thing across the bridge.
Which is, yeah, that's very costly and probably
Well,
not
hell,
something
yes.
that
I'm not sure you
could.
could you even do that? I mean, it just doesn't seem to make sense to me. I don't.
Here's what an example. If somebody came to you and said, Bud, I want to share one of your, a spot in your driveway, okay, and it was your neighbor two doors up, you would have to put a sidewalk in.
Exactly.
So,
Why?
and you could say, I'm not putting the sidewalk in, so you can't share
Well,
parking.
if they needed a parking spot, okay. Making your muddy in the waters, I can tell you that. No, nobody, that issue isn't gonna happen.
Nigel, thoughts?
Well, my thoughts are, this needs to be ironed out to cover that liability issue.
I'm thinking 1,000 may be too far, but now that you explained graphically, you showed me where that is, 1,000 maybe isn't too bad.
I'll add a few things. One is we're talking not about existing uses, but future uses. So we're not making a regulation right now for what we have, but for what somebody might
So
decide
right
they
now,
want to do.
with this ordinance, these people are covered that want to put a business here, they're covered now. In the future, they won't be? If we want to add a business?
No, the idea is, right now our ordinance, so what's changed, and if you look at the back of your sheet, I highlighted in yellow
I
what
did,
we added.
it didn't make sense to me then either.
Okay, so what is in our ordinance now says that you can share within 66 feet of the lot.
Yes.
Okay, and that was done because the Heritage Museum came in and they wanted to share with the Bullsburg Steakhouse. And Bullsburg Steakhouse is 66 feet away from the Heritage Museum, and I think that's the best regulation I've ever heard in my life. Anyway, so we had 66 feet. So we proposed changing that from 66 feet to 1,000 feet. So right now, if you have a business or you're a new business and you're coming to the village and you can't meet all your required parking and you want to share parking, you have to be within 66 feet. So if you're a new business and you come into the village and we change this to 1,000 feet, then you have more options, right? That provides a little bit of
Okay.
relief, which is
Okay,
something
I
that we've
understand that.
discussed. Yes.
I don't see a scenario of that happening though.
Maybe it's not within 1,000 feet. Maybe they have someone who's within 350 feet that they could share with. It doesn't mean you have to go
Oh, I
to
agree
the,
with that, I agree with that part.
doesn't mean
But-
you have to go to the person that's 1,000 feet away.
But the scenario of renting something from Kelly's or renting something from the Bullsburg Car Company and having to put a sidewalk all the way down there, which isn't feasible to block the parking lot of Kelly's, and this is a drainage ditch down there on this side, you can't put a sidewalk there. It doesn't, that particular scenario doesn't make sense.
So maybe that scenario then doesn't make sense, and someone on this side of the village doesn't try to share with Eric down at the car company, because it doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
So that person goes and tries to find somebody who's within a closer distance that does make sense. And if you leave we took the language from College Township that says means of pedestrian access is provided from the parking space to the uses so that pedestrians are not required to cross an arterial street, which is 322, or to traverse private property, right? So if you leave that language in, then the onus is on the person that wants to share the parking to figure out, just like Frank said, if they want to put in a path, if they're sharing from the back of a property, they want to put a path in to get that person access to the front of the business. The onus is on them. Todd has his hand up too.
Go ahead, Todd.
I would I think it's important to point out that, as we know from other projects in the township, bridges don't last forever. And the one that we're talking about by the steakhouse property is not going to last forever. Eventually, it's going to be replaced. So whether that's in 5 years or 15 years, there may be an opportunity at that time to put in a pedestrian way. In fact, it may actually be required at some point, depending on what PennDOT regulations say. So just because there is no viable means of putting a sidewalk there now doesn't mean that there won't be in a few years.
And just to piggyback on that, we have been working on the sidewalks within the village. And one of the discussion points when we finish kind of taking care of those sidewalks, the supervisors may want to discuss, do we want to use some of that special projects money to put in sidewalks and some of the missing links that we have?
As long as the township's responsible for cleaning the sidewalks.
That's a discussion point we have to have after we're done.
Well, let me add a little bit more here. I think we'll all agree that 66 feet is pretty small. I mean, 66 feet is essentially the width of some of our historic properties in the township. I mean, I live on a quarter-acre lot. It's one chain by 2.5 chains.
I mean, no purchase.
So, but 1,000 feet seems like, remember, when we started this conversation, part of the problem we had was people were saying that I don't want to walk 1,000 feet. So I think 1,000 feet is not a constraint for us. We could easily shorten that distance. I don't think we'd have any customers being really upset about it.
It's not so much the customers that you're talking about.
Go ahead, please.
It's not so much the customers you're talking about, though. Everybody's going to go to the least common denominator, where if somebody wants to come to Duffy's, they're going to park as close as they can possibly get. The problem that we have here is satisfying a requirement, okay? So that's the bigger issue here, is satisfying a requirement. And, for example, if somebody on West Main Street, there is not a lot of parking on West Main Street, there's not a lot of parking to share. So where exactly does somebody go right by Tennis Alley if they want to do something with their property? So all of a sudden you want to make some place that's a retail or want to do something which is an allowable use. So where do you go for that shared parking? Well, if you think about some of the options that you have, there's not a lot. So maybe they can say, okay, hey, Tracy, maybe they can say, hey, church, I'm a yoga studio, and I'd like to share some parking because I'm only open Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday mornings, and I'd like to share some parking with you, but that distance is going to be a problem. And the idea was solely to give people options. And if we have a problem with, access, I totally agree with access. And we can say that you have to have access, but you are allowing then the properties on the west side, which I've been concerned about with this, with lowering it down to 750, you're allowing them more options.
I think including parking that's not going to be used as part of the parking you're providing doesn't make sense. We need to be talking, you're better arguing for we're requiring too much parking.
Well, yes, of course you are.
Okay,
That's
okay,
ridiculous.
but
That's the whole thing. But remember, we also talked about the overlay for people like Rebecca who can't. There's other things like that. But you are requiring the parking. And unless you want to make the whole historic area an overlay, then the parking is going to be required anyway. And this parking has been required because of some engineering study, I don't even know how to describe it, which is, thank you. So, if you're going to require that, and you're not going to give an overlay to the entire historic district, then you've got a problem that you have to solve by telling people that we're going to give you an option of shared parking, which is one of the things that we're talking about, so that somebody out on Tennis Alley on West Main Street will be able to do something because now they're sharing parking because they've got a 1,000-foot advantage and they can work with this.
But if people aren't going to use it, then what is it? I mean,
People-
why not put it on the other side of the highway then? Because if people aren't going to use it, then
But but you've got a problem because you're talking about technicalities now, and it is a technicality. It is. It's the same way if you go to Doylestown and you go anywhere else. People are going to go to the lowest common denominator. But the fact of the matter is you have an agreement to provide parking within 1,000 feet of your premises. And that's the idea of what we're working with. It's not perfect. It's not going to say, oh, you people going over to this yoga studio, you have to park over there. Oh, you people going to Duffy's, you have to park over there. Or you people going to a basketball, you must park over there. It's not going to happen that way. It goes to the lowest common denominator, yet you have parking provided to you if you should need it.
And I think where it gets used is less for the visitor coming to Basketful or Duffy's and more for the employee going to Basketful or Duffy's.
Could very well be. That's probably a better option.
And the other flip side of that discussion is, and it's still yet to be discussed by the Planning Commission, was the Parking Committee discussed off-site shared parking locations, which would be the churches and the fire hall. So that's sort of separate from this 1,000 feet discussion because that's a whole other discussion point.
Why aren't alleys included in this discussion?
Why aren't alleys included in terms of the pedestrian access or just?
Yeah, pedestrian
Distance
access, yeah.
The doors are too narrow.
But they're walkable.
Well, they are, and I don't know that.
Any property owner
They're very.
I think
that has property that backs on Tennis Alley could allow parking in their property
Yeah, this is
in the
where
backside.
maybe more refinement is needed on C in determining what we consider safe means of pedestrian access. I mean, obviously a sidewalk on Main Street or Church Street, we can clearly say is meant for pedestrians. Maybe we include the alleyways as considered safe pedestrian
Use them
access.
now.
I don't
Use
know,
them now.
but that's a discussion point.
I would wholeheartedly disagree with the alleys. First of all, they are, I don't know, my alley's very dark. Very dark, nor would I want people back there milling around. You have private residences back there, and because it's very dark, I would not want people milling around back there. And I think you're just buying trouble, and they're so narrow that,
What do you want to use the alleys for now? I
Now,
must have lost something here.
The question Denny was asking is are we going to consider the alleyways as a safe means of pedestrian?
They welcome now every day.
As a
Hundreds of
walkable-
people, yeah.
I know you do, but you.
I don't, well, I see a few little dogs come down through there, people, and dogs come down through there.
I want to just bring something up here to get us back to page square one. All we're trying to do is go from 66 feet to some reasonable number. I mean, we're sitting here trying to renegotiate the whole program again, which we did for 6 months. This is just the first step. We're not, we've got a lot of other things that are in the Planning Commission that will continue on this process. So like I said, right now, all we're trying to go is from 66 to 1,000. That's really all we're looking at.
Well,
And maybe 1,000 is too much. I don't know.
should we send it back for some refinement?
I think we have to send it back for to add the, whether, you have a sidewalk or whatever, we have to send it back for that anyway.
Well, I think we've had a pretty good discussion and definitely going to give them some things to think about. So let's include the,
I'm just making notes for the Planning Commission. Are you guys okay with 1,000 feet or would you like them to think about?
How about, how many feet is it to 322 down there?
To 322 over here?
15, I'd make it 1,500.
From the diamond,
Yeah.
it's probably about 1,300
I'd make
feet.
it 1,300 feet then.
And
That's a little much.
to give you
but-
some context, if you
Yeah.
walk from the former Macy's in the mall down to Rural King, it is 1,154
Is that
feet.
right? I'll be darned.
So it's a
Okay.
little over 1,100 feet from
Yeah.
one end of the mall to the other in
That's
terms of the
reasonable.
stores.
That's reasonable.
Can I ask a question?
sure, please.
Mark, on your little graph and Mark, if you were at Tennis Alley, how far is it to the churches?
To the
on that?
churches?
Yeah.
Well, let's see here. I'd probably say it's about.
Not straight. You have to go around and follow the road.
It's probably, from Tennis Alley to the churches, I'd say it's probably close to 1,300 feet.
Okay, so that would preclude that. So if we shrink it up even tighter, then that.
But remember,
Okay.
yeah, remember that's the off-site shared parking
That's offsite, as
discussion.
with this municipal lot
Yep.
here, be offsite
Yep.
shared. Okay. I just think in the end, we just have to figure out how to make this work better for people that want to come in and open a business. I mean, within our regulations, but I feel like we just keep jumping through hoops
What
for
part of
like a
Tennis
year and a
Alley
half,
do you-
and we're not
Tennis
going
in
anywhere.
Maine? You at Tennis in Maine?
Tennis Alley to Blue Spring is the
That's
next
off my
question.
map.
Pretty far.
Give me a second, I had a different map pulled up, I can tell you real quick.
That's about 1,000.
It's pretty far down there, yeah.
To Blue Spring
I know
Park.
from the middle of the diamond, it's very far. Let me-
Oh, Middle of Diamond to Blue Spring, oh.
But I'll look from Tennis to Blue Spring real quick
Okay.
here and tell you.
Which part of Tennyson, Maine?
That's what I was measuring from,
Yeah.
yeah. So, nothing goes slower than your computer when you're trying to do something everybody's watching.
I can't do this, so I'm impressed.
All right, let's see.
Figure it out.
Yeah, it's about 1,000 feet from the edge of, like right at the corner of Tennyson, Maine up to Blue Spring Park, at the parking area.
Okay, thanks.
So I would suggest that the planning commission consider a couple alternative distances and identify what the potential is for shared parking under those alternate distances. And including looking at longer than 1,000 feet and shorter than 1,000 feet. And, you know, I hate to keep pushing this off, but I think we want to get it, I think we want, but we also want to get it right. Yeah, and of course, we can always, we screw up, we can change.
We gave the points, we can take them away.
Yeah. Except the pin.
Okay, anything more on this item, folks? Okay, we're gonna send that back. The staff doesn't have enough things on their plate. Next item on our agenda is financial planning.
Okay. So at the July meeting, the board discussed adding a fund balance policy, a structurally balanced budget policy, and a health insurance reserve policy to its financial toolbox. The board directed staff to set the fund balance policy at 10% of recurring expenditures. At last month's meeting, Supervisor Graham expressed concern at setting the fund balance at 10% as he felt that was too high. The board asked staff to provide them with cash flow information, and we put together, Dwight and I, a cash flow analysis that explains how our revenue comes in and what our money does through the year. We're going to begin preparation of our 2023 operating budget in a couple of weeks here. So it would be really helpful if we could actually have the fund balance, structurally balanced budget, and health insurance reserve fund policies in place by then, so we can use them as we prepare the budget. I will say that the draft policies from last month were included in your packet, and you will note with the health insurance reserve that we can use that to help offset the cost of our employees for what they're paying for their premiums. And that also the supervisors could write into the health insurance fund balance that when the health insurance fund balance reaches $100,000, we can unassign a portion of that and apply it to the general fund in our unreserved fund balance, because then that becomes a non-tax revenue source for us. So I'm open for discussion. I will say on the memo that when I put this together, I think it's important to understand how our money flows and what an unreserved fund balance is. I think there's some discussion about that last month. So the majority of our money comes from three main sources: our property taxes, which is 29% of our revenue, our earned income taxes, which is 43.1%, and our real estate transfer taxes, which is 12.1%. Earned income tax and real estate transfer taxes get paid to us monthly. And the transfer taxes always represent the month before. They're always a month behind. So the January transfer tax is usually higher because more houses tend to change hands in December before the end of the year. And then it's pretty low at the first quarter of the year because houses don't really sell as much in the winter. At least they hadn't in the past. Our property taxes are billed on March 1st of each year. We collect 87% of our real estate taxes during the discount period. We collect in general 97% of our real estate taxes, so we have a very good collection rate. When you're looking at what happens, and I think it's important to understand the beginning of the year and the end of the year, because those are the times that we rely on these unreserved funds. So in January and February of 2021, we collected $6,148 in property taxes, $61,129 in transfer taxes, and $142,243 in earned income taxes. We also brought in $81,030 in local services and miscellaneous revenue. So our total revenue for the 2 months of January and February was $290,550. In those same 2 months, we spent $461,227. We pay the first quarter of the COG bill in February, which last year accounted for $139,270 of those expenditures. That left us in a deficit of $170,677. We used unreserved fund balance to cover that deficit so we could pay our bills. At the end of the year, in November and December, we collected $5,961 in property taxes, $82,218 in transfer taxes, and $262,797 in earned income taxes. We also brought in $99,250 in local services and miscellaneous revenue. That gave us a total revenue for November and December of $444,265. During those same 2 months, we spent $639,788. We pay the fourth quarter COG bills in November, which accounts for $106,000 of those expenditures. That leaves us with a deficit of $195,000. Again, we use the unreserved fund balance. And when Dwight and I were talking about this, the unreserved fund balance, municipalities are not allowed to go out and get a line of credit. If you have a business and you have revenue cycles, you would have a line of credit. Frank and I had talked about this the other day in my office. Municipalities can't do that. The only option we have available to us is to take a tax anticipation note if we're running short at the beginning of the year, and then to adjust your taxes at the end of the year. So really, having the cash on hand is the way that we get through the bumps in our revenue cycle. We know that from our taxes go out March 1st. We have residents who pay March 1st. We know from March 1st through about the end of June, we're going to collect the bulk of our revenue. We start spending the bulk of our money from April until about October, because that's when we do all of our projects and things that are weather dependent. We don't spend a lot of money at the beginning of the year because we're just plowing snow. It's very weather dependent. So having that unreserved fund balance is important to help us through January and February, November and December. And I will also say that we spend on average about $240,000 a month to provide services to our residents. And with inflation and other things that have happened this year, we've seen how important having that unreserved fund balance is, because it helps us through the bumps with, diesel prices going up and project prices going up and other things. So
Prices always go up.
they do, but this year they've gone up a lot. But so I'll answer any questions that you have. Like I said, I'd like to get to a place where we can have these policies hopefully enacted tonight, maybe with some tweaking. And I will say that unassigning the health insurance reserve fund is $180,000 in it right now. Yeah.
That was a question, okay.
So unassigning 100,000 of that and applying it to the general fund is definitely something you could direct us to do.
Is 80,000 a sufficient safeguard
Yes.
with
Yeah.
respect to?
That's money that we overpaid our insurance by.
That's money we got back for unused claims.
Right, we overpaid. We're
And
gonna
we
get money
don't,
back.
we've been using it to offset a cost that our employees are paying into the premiums, but we only have employees that have more than single coverage pay in, and that's only 2 or 3 people at this point.
Question.
Okay.
Do we, like, for example, let's say we took that 80,000 and we put it over, do we put that in like a cash flow fund, whatever you want to call it, or does it go into the general fund?
So we, within the general fund, right, we do have.
I'm not comfortable with that.
Well, no, we do have, I'm sorry, I was not done. Within the general fund, we do have buckets, right? The general fund, we're designed as a municipality. Everything goes in the general fund. It gets swept up at the end. However, if it's an assigned fund balance, we're tracking it. If we're moving it over, we actually have a money market account that we put our money in so that it earns higher interest. That's where most of our tax money goes at the beginning of the year. We also have the ability, and we have some money through Pliget in some CDs. When we know we don't need the money for 30, 60, 90 days, we park the money in a CD so it earns interest.
Okay, I guess what my point is, I want to make sure that if we do something like that, that we track it.
Yes.
So that, because I've found, not just with this, but nonprofits, when you put money in the general fund, it disappears.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure that we have, we may create this policy, but if we can get enough ahead in it, maybe we can back it off down the road.
Absolutely.
That we don't have to mess. So we might say 10%, and if that fund balance moves up, we can back it up in the other direction.
And I will say that every month I get the financial statements from Mr. Miller, and we do track the unassigned fund balance at the start of the month and the end of the month, and we track the assigned fund balance. So we do keep a track of what we have in there, and we can certainly continue to do that with this.
Yeah, the two places the word is caught is, there's a deficit on the January, February, and there's a deficit over here on the November, December. I don't like the word deficit.
Well, I don't think there is a deficit.
What do you mean there isn't a deficit?
Well, how do we manage to do this for the last 150 years?
How do we manage to do it? We
Yeah.
had a fund balance.
Well, we don't have a fund balance at all, is that what you're telling us?
No, we have a fund balance. What we want you to do, so Harris Township, I've been here 17 years. I've been fortunate enough to be here 17 years. When I started in 2005, our budget was like $2 million, and we were a very small operation. And we had some very lean years when the markets did what they did in 2008 and 2009. I'm sure some of you remember that. And we really were rubbing two nickels to try to make some money around here to try to kind of keep things going. We grew exponentially from 2014 to 2021. We were the fastest growing municipality in Center County, and we grew like 20-some%, which is amazing. With growth comes an influx of money, which is amazing because we got caught up, and I think Bruce used the term, and I agree with it 100%. We had a lot of deferred maintenance around here, and we caught up on a lot of that stuff. We're working on some of these projects. So now we're at a point where we've been using the money that we have. We don't have an official fund balance policy, but Dwight and I are very sensitive to the fact the Board of Supervisors doesn't want to raise taxes erroneously. So we've been trying for the last so many years. We use that fund balance. He and I fight every year about how much is in the unassigned fund balance, and we use the fund balance to cover the bumps, right? To cover the revenue cycle. What we want to do now is we've hit a point where we're not a small municipality anymore. We're a medium-sized municipality. We have residents that expect a level of service, and we deliver an amazing level of service to our residents. We don't want to get to a point where we go backward. Going backward isn't really an option anymore, so we want to stay where we're at and keep ourselves in good financial stead. You took on a $3.795 million loan that we're going to have to pay back. That's accounting for over $200,000 of expenditures now in our budget. That's something we didn't have in 2005, 6, 7.
2 years ago wasn't there.
Right.
It's a settled period after we agreed to the loan.
Yes.
Yeah.
So having a fund balance policy isn't us saying, oh, we don't have any money. We have money. I look at the statements every month. We have money. Having the fund balance policy and the structurally balanced budget policy, which is very important because it says we're going to live within our means, basically just says, hey, and it says to our residents, we want to put ourselves in good financial footing. We want to be solid footing. We know we have this loan we have to pay off into the future. So let's put these tools in our toolbox now. You can raise it and you can lower it. You know, if you say 10% now and we get 12% in there or 13 or 14% in there, you can say, you know what, and I wrote in the fund balance policy, we could look at it every 3 years. You can say, you know what, that's too much, Amy, let's go to 8.
Yeah, but the transfer tax has been a blessing to us.
The transfer tax is a result of the growth, yes.
Yeah, it's been a blessing that's unexpected. For years, it's been wonderful.
Yeah, the transfer tax for the last 6, 7 years has kept us.
Yeah, they have, I think it was 326,000?
Yes.
That's like 0.5%. Think of the growth we have to generate that kind of money.
Yes.
All right, you're up.
Well, I don't know. We are growing, well, I don't know.
Just share with us.
Well, when you say a fund balance, does this mean that we are gonna raise our budget by 10%?
No.
Okay, so that means we're gonna have a savings account. We're gonna put money in a savings account until it equals 10%.
It means that at the end of the year, remember, Bud, you should remember this better than anybody. In 2008, maybe we were projected to end the year with $6,000 left over. $6,000, and I remember I told you it's $240,000 a month to provide services. We couldn't make even part of the payroll with $6,000. So the idea with the fund balance policy is we say that we're going to end the year with $250,000, 10% of our budget left over, at least.
So that is a savings account of $10,000.
It's not
Of 10%.
It's not a savings account.
Well, it's extra money at the end of the year, it's 10%.
It's unreserved funds.
Unreserved
so they're
funds.
not they're not so.
And those funds are gonna carry over for the next year, the next
Savings is a
year.
very interpretation
Yeah,
of the word
right, it's
savings.
just like your own personal
Yeah.
budget, right? You
Well, I'm
don't
just
run,
saying,
you're not running your checking
it's a
account
little
to
bit
zero.
of, it is account ease, and you can say anything you want, you can make money, anything you want to make them. Point is, do we manage our money properly? At
Yes.
the end of the year, we know when to spend this money, we know when to spend that money, we do that well.
I'll challenge you, cut your COG contribution by 10% and you'll get there.
It's not it's your cog, it's our cog contribution.
Cut your COG contribution by 10%
Well, number one,
and you'll get there.
that's gonna be another discussion too, because that has been a bug in all the managers' ears, because that isn't their money, they can't handle it. But what they don't understand, it is their library, it is their fire company, it is their, Parks and Rec, it is their planning. It's the same, but the managers don't have that money, that's a complaint, I understand that. But what I'm saying is, I don't mind having some extra money left over at the end of the year, but how much do we need? I agree, you say 10%, which is, how much is?
10% is $250,000.
I don't know why $100,000 wouldn't be sufficient.
Because $100,000 won't pay our bills for 1 month.
Well,
You should
that-
carry
wait a
over
minute now,
enough
wait a
to
minute,
pay our
that-
bills.
Okay, so you're saying we can't pay our bills now?
No, that's not what I'm
The answer is-
saying.
well,
I'm
okay.
saying this is an emergency fund, and this also helps with the
Emergency,
funds.
okay, now we're in a different fund now. This is not an emergency fund. What do we have, the emergency is gonna cost us $100,000?
But can I ask you, in your own personal checkbook,
Mm-hmm.
do you run it to zero every month?
I don't have any idea,
Okay, case in point.
none.
What we're doing here, Bud, is.
Well,
we're
then let's get it
No, wait, let me
clear.
finish. What we're doing here is, to look at it from a business standpoint, is we're creating our own line of credit. We can't go get one from a bank. We need something that we can rely on when our cash flow is low. So that's what it is. So we're gonna just, all we're saying is, this is the number we're gonna shoot for, and every year. It doesn't mean that we come to the end of December, we could be at 190,000, but it was because we had an emergency or something, and that's what we're using the line
Well,
of
where's
credit
this
for.
money coming from?
It's not coming from anywhere.
It's not coming from anywhere.
It's coming out of the air.
It's from excess funds that we're not spending during the year.
All right, so now we're getting closer now.
So if-
It's from good budgeting.
It's from, which we do good
There we go.
budgeting.
I
But it's
agree.
also from higher than expected revenues coming in.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
also from lower than, I went to the school of budgeting, my mentor taught me you budget your expenditures high
Well, see-
and you budget your revenues low. That's what I do.
It's either guns or butter.
What does that even
That's
mean?
that's Samuelson's economic.
What kind of final policy statement do you want from us? What would you like from us?
So I have the draft policies in
One of
your
these, this
packet.
one right there.
So there's 3 of them.
Well, my other
sheet.
point
Yep.
is,
Okay.
if we have $250,000 at the end of the year, that means we have more money than we need. We're budgeting well, we don't need that money. If we have if you want to reserve $100,000, say, okay, let's go into next year, we have $100,000 to
What are you
carry over.
gonna
I
do
don't
with-
have a problem with that.
What are you gonna do if we have, I mean, we had started the year with $498,000 in the fund balance this year.
Okay, we're good to go.
I think we need to stop talking about this in terms of $100,000 or $250,000. We need to talk about it, keep the focus on the percentage.
Yep.
Okay, because the budget's gonna change, the amounts are gonna change. We need a policy that doesn't say we're keeping $100,000 around or $250,000.
Well, I equate
It says-
percentage to dollars,
It
yes.
says we're gonna do a certain percentage.
The perfect example is that the Mary Elizabeth Bridge.
Mm-hmm.
If we had not gotten the American Rescue
ARPA,
Plan
yeah.
money, where would we come up with $630,000
We would have had to take out another loan.
And
to build a bridge?
Yes.
to Bud's point, you're right, we get through November through February and we pay the bills. But to me, this is more about a contingency in case something unexpected comes down the pike.
I agree,
And
I agree.
And rather than suddenly telling our people that their real estate taxes are gonna go up by a large amount, we're gonna say that we've kept a little bit aside, because we have a buffer in there, so that
Well,
we don't have to
that's
hit,
just
so
good
that we
budgeting,
don't have to
yes.
hit, but it's also good precaution, because unexpected things happen.
The 250 is a mill? What's the
No,
mill?
it's
What's the mill on this now?
a mill is close to up around 300,000 now.
Less than a mill,
Yeah,
8/10 of a mill.
yeah.
So, and we're not gonna put this money in a coffee can.
No.
we can put it into some kind of interest-bearing bond, CD, whatever. And so we're
Yeah.
not wasting people's money. We're taking their money and we're gonna invest it and so utilize it. If we do a good job with this and we get that fund balance to whatever level we think is appropriate, then it's gonna be stable,
Yeah.
unless something happens. So we're talking kind of like, let's get something done in the next couple of years to get to the point. And then we don't have to continuously draw and do this. It's something we gotta bite the bullet on and do over a reasonable period of time.
Yep, absolutely.
I
So-
would like to say, I would propose that these draft 3 policies, I've read the language on them, I think they're a good starting point. I would propose we make a motion that we approve these.
Is that a formal?
That's a formal motion.
A second.
Okay.
As it was.
I was gonna say the same
Okay.
thing.
Have these been by our solicitor?
They have not, but they actually come mostly from GFOA, but I can send them to them to look at.
Okay, I think that would be wise. But, okay, we have a motion, we have a second. You have the document in front of you. Further discussion?
Well, I'll vote in favor of it, but I certainly will keep a close eye on this 10% versus 5% or whatever it is, to see what the story there is.
I think that would be the responsible thing for us to do.
We're all gonna do that, but.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We aren't even halfway yet.
Proposed ordinance 356, extending parking restrictions along Andrea Way.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Any objections? Passed.
Oh, you didn't say your thing that you would say.
He did
He
that.
just did? Any objections?
Passed without objection.
There we go.
There you go.
Okay, item G, engaging the Cohen Law Group to negotiate a cable franchise agreement with Chantel Go Fiber.
So Chantel Go Fiber is a new cable internet phone provider based in Virginia that is moving into Center County. They intend to build a new system and to offer their services to residents in the county. They're currently negotiating franchise agreements with the borough and Ferguson, and they recently reached out to College, Patton, and Harris. Chantel has indicated an interest in negotiating with College, Patton, and Harris jointly, and indicated they will pay all of our legal fees. We still use our attorney, but they'll reimburse him. We are proposing that we would use the Cohen Law Group as they negotiated our franchise with Comcast, and they're the experts on the issue in Pennsylvania. Phil Fraga is the attorney that we worked with on the last Comcast agreement. That was through the Center Area Cable Consortium, and he did submit an engagement letter for the board to look at, and then we also had some additional information from Chantel. It's my understanding from talking to Phil last week that Chantel has negotiated franchises in Lancaster and York, and their intent is to come in and compete for the Comcast market. Like, they're going to be a viable second option. They're not coming in. Windstream came in before and they cherry picked off hotels and apartment complexes. Chantel wants to be a provider for everybody. It's going to take them a little bit to ramp up because they have to overbuild Comcast system, but it seems like it's a no-win. It's a win-win for the township. It's a no-brainer for
I
us.
watched the presentation and see that. Interesting discussion the borough had with them.
Yeah.
Ferguson has it too, so. Apparently Windstream is backing out of providing some services.
Yeah, Windstream I think isn't going to be around here much.
Yeah.
Okay,
Well, this is fiber optics. Why would they need to have
Because they'll be laying it in the right-of-way.
they're not gonna use the present fiber optic system that the telephone company has?
I don't know.
Okay, I'm just curious what franchise fee that they would be, they're gonna attach their
They'd be
lines to the poles beside Comcast, beside everybody else.
yeah, they'd be occupying the right-of-way.
Okay.
Is this good?
are we comfortable moving forward with this?
I'm comfortable. Do we need a motion?
Yes, please.
Okay, what do we got? Wrote it down here somewhere?
Just, no, I didn't write it out, but just
Oh.
move to approve the engagement letter with Cohen.
Okay, I move that we approve the engagement letter with Chantel Franchise Negotiations and the Cohen Law Group. Is that what you wanted?
Need a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. Single axle truck purchase.
So we received a grant from the Department of Environmental Protection to buy a new single axle truck that we will use for brush collection. The grant will pay for $69,692 of the purchase. The township will match that grant with $69,692 from our equipment replacement fund. We did receive a quote to purchase a 2023 HV 507 from Five Star International for $100,500. This is for the chassis only. I put a copy of the quote in your packet. We're working on the body. We have to get these things ordered now because of the lead time on getting new vehicles.
It's an interesting co-star,
Yes, CoStars is a big savings for us.
$59,000 savings on co-star alone.
Yes.
This isn't a replacement for anything, this is
No.
a new vehicle?
New, and because we told them when we applied for the grant, we told them, like, we want to use it in other areas of our operation, and that's why we're splitting it 50-50, so they were fine with that.
Is there any possibility of tapping some of the Act 101 recycling
That's
money?
where this money's
That's
coming
coming
from.
from, okay.
Yep.
That was the question I had.
Yep, it's a Section 902 grant.
Okay, good. So Joanne had input into it?
Yes, Joanne was a big help with this.
Good.
Joanne
Okay,
and
thank
Minnie.
you. Motion to approve purchase of 2023 HV 507 chassis from Five Star International in the amount of $100,500.
Second.
Okay. Question, that would leave us $38,884. Is that, we feel that's adequate for
Yeah.
fitting it out?
The last time that we bought a single axle truck, I think the body was around 40,000. So we do have some leeway in the equipment replacement fund if it's a little more.
Okay. Anybody else have any thoughts, comments?
Have we ever worked with Pullman, Walling, and Aaronsburg to build truck bodies?
No.
We get our recycling red boxes from them. It may be worth talking to Joanne and people. They do really good work.
We can look into that.
It may save us some money.
We do off the CoStars, so we can look
Yeah,
into that.
well, talk to them and see.
Okay. All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Resolution 22-11, approving the township's minimum municipal obligation for its pension plan for 2023.
So moved.
Oh, good, I don't even need to read it.
Do we have a second? Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes. Resolution 22-12, executing a retroactive reimbursement agreement with PennDOT.
So moved. I know what that is.
So we have a second.
Tell us what it is.
My question is,
Tell us what it is then.
how did this fit into the total price of that project?
Can you second the motion first?
What is it?
Second.
Okay, we got a second.
I can explain it. Okay, what this is when we looked at getting the Warner Boulevard Bridge over Mary Elizabeth Street, when we talked about that, one of the things that we were getting some money from was from the TIP, which is MPO, that's,
Okay.
but we couldn't get it on the current TIP, but we were going to get it on a future TIP. What this says is that we're applying to get that future payment on the TIP, so that when it comes through, we'll get our money back that we're
We'll
putting
get it back,
forward.
okay,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah, this is for reimbursement
Yeah, yeah,
from the
okay.
TIP. That's exactly what this is.
Okay. Thank you, Tip. That was a good tip.
Yeah, it was.
Okay, discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes. Resolution 22-13, authorizing the waiver of tax collection penalties and fees in accordance with Act 57.
So Act 57 of 2022 was signed by the governor on July 11th. This act amends the local tax collection law, providing relief for residents who do not receive a tax notice when a property or a mobile home transfer has taken place within the previous 12 months. A taxing district is required to authorize such action by resolution within 90 days of the effective date of the act, so that's October 11th. The requirements under the act begin with the 2023 tax year. The resolution allows for the tax collector to automatically waive penalties for taxpayers who have purchased a home within 12 months and have not received their tax bill in the mail. This only allows for a waiver of penalties so that taxpayers are able to pay in the face amount. It does not allow for payment of the discount amount. Resolution 2213 outlines the specific steps that a taxpayer must follow to prove that the tax bill was not received. The state is also developing a form for tax collectors to use in these situations. It's important to note that tax collectors cannot be held liable for any amount arising from the acceptance of a good faith payment in accordance with this resolution. I would also note that the language in the resolution comes directly from the language that was in the bill that was approved by the legislature.
This probably happened to 4 people in the state.
They can get this, but we can't get local use of radar.
I need to ask a question regarding the item we talked about on 2211.
I took care of that.
Did you change the signature block?
Yes, there's a new one in the folder that has your name on it, sir.
Okay. Well, she put Bruce's name on twice.
Bruce signs twice? What the heck?
Okay, as long as I'm gonna take it.
You sure? All right, can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All right, further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving Resolution 2213, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. It is passed. Appointment to the Center Region Code Board of Appeals.
Public Safety Committee recommended 7 members to the Center Region Building and Housing Board of Appeals in February. In July, one of those members, Chad Mayholtz, accepted a new position and relocated. The General Forum forwarded to the member municipalities a staff recommendation to appoint Douglas Workman, P.E., to serve on the Center Region Building and Housing Board of Appeals to complete Mr. Mayholtz's 3-year term from September 1st, 2022 to March 30th, 2024.
So moved.
Second. Third.
Discussion?
Whoever he is.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes. Request to close Tressler Street for a block party.
Residents of Tressler Street are requesting permission to close 944 Tressler to 924 Tressler on October 1st from 12 noon to 7 p.m. for a block party.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
All right, discussion?
Might as well can just walk up there.
Any objections? Without objection, it passes.
Hey, bud, is there a pedestrian way?
We need to put a sidewalk in somewhere.
All right. Supervisor Graham
Oh.
would like to discuss the State College Borough Water Authority's recent action to stop adding fluoride to the water supply.
Yeah, I wanted to at least get discussion and maybe get a consensus to send a letter. This actually, I date back to this probably when I was on the Township, was over 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And they started discussing this very same thing. And it went nowhere because, but the reason they're having trouble at that time getting fluoride. It was coming from China. It was expensive, and it was costly to them to operate and everything else. So they just sort of stopped it. And then I guess recent discussion came up, and of course everybody read all the papers about it. And at that time I read a lot from the dentists and doctors, and everybody seemed to recommend fluoride. So I concerned that the citizens of Harris Township may benefit from this fluoride, and they seem to. So, what bothers me, they say it's not a cost move, but it really is a cost move for them. So I think maybe I would like to draft a letter to the Water Authority that saying that as representing Harris Township, I think that we should continue the fluoride. Not that it would work, but I think we need to. That it isn't a done deal. They have to still get authority not to do that from whoever their board, whoever their ranking is in the state. But what I've read and seen, and not really experienced myself, but everybody seemed to think that fluoride. And I remember when it wasn't fluoride. I remember when it was introduced across the country, and it turns out it was a very good thing. So I think I would like to see us send a letter to the board. Since we don't have we have a representative, but he's not going to be there longer, I guess. But that encourage them to continue the fluoride.
Is this after the fact decision, or have they voted on this? Right?
The board voted to discontinue, but they still have to get permission from the state or somebody, whoever manages their water quality. They still have to get permission from them, and the board can have voted again and voted, change around, every meeting they can do it like we do.
So it's not.
They're still doing it though. They're still doing
It's
it.
not water over the dam.
Pretty close, but it's getting high. Well, one thing, I remember years ago, my sister, they had a house and had well water, and their dentist told them she had to put fluoride drops in her kids' drinks because of the cavities in the teeth and prevented them. But the thing that concerns me here is, again, with the water company, every time we turn around, they're raising the rates. They say, here we go, we're raising the rates, we're getting more, and we're gonna get rid of some services. That's what I see here. I see them dropping some of their service and keeping the rates up. I mean, I don't know what's going on with the water company, but it seems like that we've had this discussion with them with either rate increases or fire hydrants or something. It's always something where they're looking for more money or creating more money, and I don't understand why. And I think this fluoride is just another part of that iceberg.
One of the things that piqued me on this too, as a friend that was a dentist. She was near the Maryland border, Maryland, yeah, and she would see the instance of course they called them Mountain Dew teeth because they'd feed their kids Mountain Dew in a bottle, but she noticed that fluoride was her silver bullet. That was their silver bullet down there. It comes into water, the certain amount, and however they regulate it. So that was her silver bullet with the kid. Those did a lot of pediatric work, and it certainly was like I said, they're ace in the hole for fluoride.
Would the tone of the letter be to ask them to reinvestigate this or to
Reevaluate.
reconsider the decision?
I would say we strongly urge them to reconsider that, yeah, sure. But I don't know if we can speak to residents of Harris Township, but as representative of Harris Township residents, I think we should ask them to.
I think so. I
Well,
think
you four guys run the system, I'm on a well, so I'm going to depend on your input more than mine.
my
You're in
teeth,
trouble.
the cavities don't matter
I have
anymore.
to tell you, my dentist recommends that I buy fluoride toothpaste.
There is available, yes.
Yeah.
No, they had all these arguments about it's dangerous, and yes, if you read the danger of fluoride, if you would drink a gallon of fluoride a day, I think you would be pretty sick.
You should be pretty sick.
Fluoride, the other
Or
one
if
is
you drink a
fluoride
gallon of
18.
gasoline a day.
You should be pretty sick, yeah.
All you have to do is worry about fluoride 18. That's
Yeah.
a bad one.
I confess, I don't remember where the source of this was, but, and it may have been something the Water Authority actually put out, but the benefit of fluoridated water, it turns out, through studies, is pretty negligible.
That's not true. That's been disputed. That's another thing that piqued me too, Nigel. That is not a true statement. That is been disproven over and over again. So I read that. That's another thing that sort of piqued my interest. Well, how can they come up with this decision when they have many studies that say that that's not true?
The general tone of the letters to the editor of the paper were to keep fluoride.
Yeah.
The general public was very much in favor of
Well,
keeping.
when it starts with the American Dental Association and on down the line, and dentists writing in, and my contact with that dentist, it just doesn't make
Tell them to
sense.
follow the science.
I have no problem sending a letter. Frankly, I think it's a non-issue. Buy fluoride toothpaste.
It may be, but I think we need to get
Yep,
out there to
I'm
where
I'm fine.
So you're gonna draft something?
I will draft something and send it to you.
strongly.
What's our position on the board? Let's have
We're drawing a super letter from supervisors,
Super
supervisors.
grant.
Super grand.
Sign it, super
Okay.
grant.
We have another item on our agenda that we added.
Don't forget O.
Oh, Denny's, no parking.
That was O. That's what I put.
Okay, I bring this to your attention because it's been causing
Where do they
reckless
park up
traffic
there now?
conditions on
Where do
Bush
they
Valley
park
Road.
now?
Pardon?
Where do they park? I don't see anybody parked there. Where do they park now that we have?
They park along the road from where the structure is being built, all the way down to the mailbox we
When
talked
do they do
about.
this?
They've been doing it for the last
They've been
year.
doing it since the house started.
It's been a huge issue.
I've been by there dozens of times. I've never seen a car parked there.
You
There's
may
like
be
nine-
going to the wrong place.
There's usually
Are they
like-
construction workers or?
Yeah, usually 9 trucks. The person who was building the house didn't allow anyone to park in his driveway.
There's a sign in the driveway, don't park in the driveway.
Oh, this is only while it's being built or,
Yeah,
All in its whole building stage.
yeah, it's been an
And
ongoing
in fact,
issue.
Tuesday, I was going up Brush Valley, and the truck was coming down. I had to back down to where the mailbox is that we talked about having damaged to allow that truck to get by. It's so narrow.
It is narrow, that's what I'm saying.
You can't park on it.
Imagine that.
Would this, Danny, would you envision this being a permanent thing or something that would be there just for the construction?
I'd make it permanent because it's a very narrow road.
It's not actually wide enough to accommodate parking on
Yeah, I
either
can't
side of the
imagine me
road.
parking there now anyway, I'll tell
All
you
we
the
have
truth.
to do is put signage up, right?
Yeah,
I don't have a problem with that.
If the road's that narrow and you can't safely park there without,
No, you can't, yeah, I agree.
I'd say let's go do it.
We're gonna see how narrow it is when we start plowing snow.
yeah, we know. Do you want to,
Prepare something for us.
do you want me to do the public hearing and everything for October?
Yep, let's get her done.
Was this, the entire length, is there issues of the rest of, I don't know whether there is or not.
Well, it's narrowness runs the full length of Rock Hill Road. The widest part is from Rock Hill to Hauser, when you people go up to the winery.
Yeah.
But once you get west of that, you probably lose about 3 feet of width.
Well, I don't see that no parking would interfere with anybody. I mean, if you're not allowed to park, I can't see that would interfere with anybody if they're not allowed to park there. It wouldn't be a hardship for anybody, I would think.
And I guess the exception is that if an individual is having an affair, that they can call the police and let them know that they're gonna park there for a while?
Yeah, I mean,
Sort of the exception, Bill?
what we've done with Liberty Hill
Yeah.
is a good example. If they have something going on and they need to park on the street, they call me and let me know,
Okay.
and then I make sure they're not ticketed. Out in Brush Valley, I would probably let the police know right away.
And let's see, it'd be 1, 2, 3. Anderson, Caberna, Hopkins, the new one, Ziegler, Gilliland, and the one. It directly applies to probably 8 current residents, plus all the farm equipment that's on the road all the time.
Put something together for us. All right.
Thank you.
Manager's report.
I will answer any questions that you have. I will say that we set the date for brush collection for the week of October 10th, and leaf collection follows the week of October 24th. And leaf collection will go around till we have to change over for winter operations.
Do you want a yes, no on number 1 with respect to the exec session?
Yes.
What?
We need an exec session to talk about.
Oh.
Yes.
And that's probably should
And
be
we can do that in
sooner than
exec
later.
session, even
Yes,
though
I
it doesn't
talked-
deal with personnel, legal issues?
Talk to the solicitor and we may do
Okay,
that in exec
okay.
session.
Okay.
Can that be done then as part of what meeting?
We can do it either tonight, we could do it at a separate meeting, and you just have to announce at the next meeting that you had an exec
Can we
session.
do it the second meeting of this month?
The 28th? We could do that, and
I'll be
we,
back in town.
we don't necessarily have to all come here, we could do it on Zoom,
Yeah.
and we could
Do
do
you have
it,
an executive session on Zoom?
you could. Or we could do it, and we don't necessarily have to do it at 7:30, we could do it at a different time.
I'm good on the 28th.
28th works for everybody else?
Yeah, I guess so.
I'll make it work.
Can we do a 7 o'clock? Can you make a 7 o'clock, Nigel?
yeah.
I mean, you could do it during the day too, if you wanted to.
Well, that cuts into my,
Day doesn't
Yeah.
work very well for me right now.
Wednesday's not my golf day, so I don't care.
you can bring your golf cart.
I do that Tuesday, Thursdays, I don't do that.
7 o'clock on the 28th, is that good?
Yeah, it's fine.
Sounds good to me.
Fine.
I'm gonna write that down.
While we're on this topic, I'll add that Amy and I talked earlier today about this upcoming public meeting. And we discussed having a public meeting jointly with Potter Township to get together and get our residents together and kind of have us speaking as a uniform voice. And my main thought is, you know, if they announce an alignment, there's going to be a bunch of people that are going to be, oh, I'm good. And I think as a community, we should stay together on this. And whether you are individually a winner or a loser, we should all be concerned about this, not just the individual property owners that may be directly impacted, but we need to support each other.
We need to incorporate the Save the Watershed group, the Linden Hall, Oak Hall, that whole big group of 160 people.
Well, again, the idea is having a public meeting
Yeah.
jointly with our neighbors, and kind of getting everybody to agree that we want to speak as one.
It would be nice if we could get the COG and the MPO to also join us, but I think that's probably an uphill
Well,
battle.
the thing that I think that everybody's, that I've talked to, and I went to the Darling Farm meeting and stuff, is people, they know that somebody's gonna lose land or somebody, but they want a decision sooner than later so they can make their future. The one thing I think that will come out here at this next one, hopefully, is we're gonna go from probably 77 square miles of project area down to about 20-some square miles. So 50 square miles of people are probably gonna get relieved, and that'll be a big load off
Well,
of it.
that's the group I'm talking about. Yeah.
But we need to try to keep the other people that are relieved and are like, oh, I don't have to worry about it anymore. Keep them engaged
Yeah.
because they can help fight for the people who shouldn't be dragged along for 2 years until a decision is made, because that's their livelihood and that's their house, and that's not fair.
And we're still all going to be impacted, whether or not it's a personal piece of personal property. We're still all going to have to live with this.
The research that Tommy Owner did, and the other program that's being presented at the Center Lifelink building by the landscape, he's doing the 322 corridor as a base of a project.
Yeah, Penn State.
I think I'm out of town that night, but it'll be interesting to see what he has to say.
Okay, anything else in the manager's report?
Nope.
Please send out a reminder about the Center County Associated Township officials.
I will, and I'll also send the save the date for the township dinner as well, because we've
Sounds good.
have that date set. Yeah.
Okay, approval of vouchers. Somebody?
I'll move to approve the vouchers in the amount of $293,987.06.
So moved, or seconded, I'm sorry.
Okay, so we're going to pay our bills.
Yes. And that's more than 10% of our budget.
I would afford that.
I was just thinking
Gone
that.
broke.
All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. We have approved the vouchers. Okay, committee reports. Executive made the usual thing. We met, you guys saw the results of it. Parks Capital Committee, once again, has not met. Parks Capital Committee meets jointly with the authority, but they've not had any individual meetings, and they have not had any actionable items to do all year. Parks Governance Committee met. Parks Governance Committee has kind of gotten bogged down. And Chair Frank feels that he has taken the Parks Governance Committee as far as he can, and would like the Parks Governance Committee to consider bringing in somebody outside to facilitate our conversations and move things forward. It's been we've been spinning our wheels. I will note that I was doing some investigation. There's only one body that can change the bylaws for the authority. The authority. So, that's where we're at.
That's probably a good thing. I don't know if it is or not, but.
Well,
I can give you a recommendation of someone that just did a strategic plan for recycling, so he did a good job.
yeah. Well, yeah, so
If you get to that point.
that's gonna be. Now, Park Authority met. Park Authority, I'll two things I put on the table there that I think might be interesting, is the Park Authority has been providing the townships with information on pavilion rentals. I asked them if they could provide regular reports, not necessarily monthly, quarterly, on the use of our capital facilities. So how many baseball games, how many softball games are being played on our fields, how many soccer games. So the money that we've invested in our park facilities, I'd like this to be aware of, kind of what kind of usage they're getting.
I think that is in, if you want to follow it, we get a financial report, but you have to look at every check that's written. Yes.
Right. And I said, let's get a single page, because you get those thick documents, you know what? Only Frank reads them.
Bruce, are you looking at the income side of that too? The cash flow side?
Right, that's gonna come next. Right now, I'm looking at just the usage, the number of people days.
I'm thinking of softball games.
Yeah, yeah. Now, the other item I've asked for is, I'd like them to take a look at their different activities as cost centers and identify what the cost recovery is from usage, from fees and stuff like that. So the pools, for example, basically pay for themselves. What's Millbrook Marsh? How much money is Millbrook Marsh bringing in terms of
You wanna
grants
know.
and fees? And, well, you know,
Yes, I agree.
and just all these various regional facilities, we are putting money in to support some of them. The park system is not a profit-making organization, they're a service organization, but they do have a significant amount of cost recovery. And I would like to see them make that information available to all of us.
The other thing that does is once you know what your events are doing, it allows the authority, the COG, any of us to sit down and say, you know, that's not a moneymaker, but it's really good for the, so we can vote to subsidize some and you know, have other ones that are making money. So that you have programs that might be a good program for after school or something like that you can vote to subsidize with our
One
money.
little cash, yeah.
Yes. So that's the other thing that's, if you have that, then you know what you've got to do, or if you want to subsidize something or not.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's not a gotcha thing, thing. It's providing information to let the municipalities know that they are doing stuff and there are fees coming in and there are grants coming in. And so it's not just you know, not just something we're throwing money at, but something we are subsidizing and they are also working to bring in money. So those are my reports. Frank, you're up, MPO.
I'm gonna go quick. MPO didn't meet, they meet the end of the month. Facilities hasn't met for 2 months. I'm kinda a little concerned there, since we have a new facilities director, we haven't really had a meeting, so. State College Area Connector, I know 3 of us, or at least 3 of us, were up at the meeting the other night. They presented the draft for us to look at before it goes to the public. And, it's interesting, so I'm not gonna do anything there because they want us to hold it out till the public. But that's ongoing, and we're gonna have our meeting at the end of the month to discuss that. Public Safety did not meet last month. We are meeting tomorrow morning. So I'm done.
Got writer's cramp.
Oh, I can start doing this.
Okay, so we're up to Human Resources.
Okay, we did not meet, however, we did get updates by email. The wage and benefit surveys well underway. Interviews are taking place and with a few individuals from each department, and also surveys have been distributed to comparable communities regarding wage and benefits. And on an up note, it looks like we're actually getting some filling some of our many vacancies in the COG. So, good thing. Yes, finally. And that's it.
Land use, we met September 1. We talked about 2 items, the regional growth boundary, sewer service area at a glance. Jim basically went over the whole procedure with respect to how that program operates, because we have 3 new people on the committee. And then we looked at an amended regional growth boundary map. That is going to be an ongoing thing for probably a couple of years till we get a grip on that whole issue. So that's in the making. Solar power, the RFP is out for providers of the solar energy. It's due back, I think, about the 3rd week of October. And then the project management team will review those responses and get back to the working group to select the person that's going to provide it. The other item is we submitted a workshop proposal to PSATs to talk about the solar power purchasing agreement process and how it worked and how it's doing so well in Center Region. And interesting as a sideline, the university let out their initial estimate of solar savings was in the $600,000 range. They've saved up to $2.3 million on the solar power purchasing agreement. So it's a program that works. Quite shocked it was so high. Thank you. That's it.
Okay. Finance.
Oh, Finance met, we reviewed the comments that were sent back from the municipalities and forwarded them on to the budget makers, and they're going to incorporate some of the suggestions in there. The Climate Action has not met. I thought it was supposed to be today, but I got no information, so I don't know what their schedule is going to be. The Heritage Museum is having look for some December meetings over there, some open houses and that sort of thing. They're having a Oktoberfest, and I noticed that Mr. Hammeister is indicated that he would be there.
We're gonna join you there.
Yes,
Sounds like a fun time.
yes.
How many people have signed up for that?
I think 100.
Are they?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought you'd just go.
You can.
Okay, that's good.
Okay.
Anything else for the good of the cause?
I just had a minor note here. I realized that I didn't bring this up. The typo in ordinance 355, section 1C. I think serviced should be the words used twice, not services.
I'll talk to Deb, because that's printed on ordinance paper and it screws up the whole numbered book system.